my co-host let people in if I don't notice that there's people waiting to get in there. So thanks everybody for coming tonight. As I mentioned before, we are recording, so just keep that in mind for speaking and video if you don't want that to be captured. We're really excited to talk to you tonight, and I want to start by acknowledging the land that I'm on, which is the unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq. And I think those of us who ride bikes probably think about our land a whole lot, and it's a real privilege to be able to ride on this land and try to be a good steward of it. So I hope you also get a chance to reflect on your land as you go about your rides these days. And also just want to cover some accessibility and housekeeping stuff up front. So in terms of a visual description for myself, I'm a white woman about middle age, brown hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a gray t-shirt, and it has some neat different adaptive bikes on the front of it. So I want to cover just some housekeeping about how we'll run tonight. Like I said multiple times, we're going to be recording, and this is so that we can share this with folks more broadly, because not everyone was able to come tonight. So please consider that when you're speaking. If you don't want something to be recorded, don't say it. Also, if you could keep your mics muted while you're not speaking, just so we don't have any inadvertent background noise, that would be appreciated. And we'd love to see your faces if you want to have your cameras on, but totally okay if you don't want to do that. And throughout the next hour, we'll be happy to take your questions. So if you want to put questions in the chat, or if you want to wait closer to the end, and you can raise your hand, and we're a small enough group, you can probably raise your hand in your camera if you want us to call on you, or you can use the functions in Zoom under the reactions. There's a raise hand function that will let us know that you want to speak. So I think those are all the housekeeping things that I had to cover. So we'll move along about onto what we're doing here tonight. Really, the three of us just wanted to talk about what we've been doing as bicycle mayors. I myself am planning to retire, so I'm looking for someone to replace me in Halifax, and thought it was just a good chance for the three of us to talk about what we're doing, why we like doing what we're doing, and hopefully give some other cities some ideas about why they might try to find a bicycle mayor for their own cities. And so a bicycle mayor, you probably know what we are because you're here tonight, but just to say really briefly that we're really champions in our own cities, and we work to increase the uptake of cycling for transportation in cities. And we're supported by a very cool social enterprise in Amsterdam called Bikes, or BYCS. So tonight we're going to talk a bit about our roles, take some questions from you. And as I said, please put your questions in the chat anytime if you'd like. I will also put in the chat a link to the Bikes website so you can have a look about what it means to become a bicycle mayor. And I think with that, we can get to our first sort of item to cover, which is really just sort of introduction. So I wanted to do introductions with Lanrick and RC and get them to talk about why they became bicycle mayors, and what motivated them to do that. So I'm going to call on RC first to go ahead and tell us why you're a bicycle mayor, RC.
Thank you, Jillian. I'm RC, and I'm the bicycle mayor of Waterloo. I became a bicycle mayor toward the end of 2019, and that my activity started in 2020. I became a bicycle mayor because before, like, I would say 2017, 2018, I really became passionate about cycling, just cycling around Waterloo, and I was commuting more, so a combination of bike commute, but also riding transit. And from there, I asked myself, hey, I want to do more. Cycling is really beneficial for me. I don't have to pay for parking. most of the time, like it's just short trips that I do, 5 kilometers or so. And so just all the benefits. And I was thinking to myself, do I just keep the benefit just for me? Why not spread it to my city? And that's when I was looking for something related to cycling advocacy, and found BYCS or bikes. Had a conversation with them, and then I shared. They said, "Hey, RC, we'd like to know more about you. Send us your resume." And they just said, "Yeah, you'll be good to be a bike mayor." And started the process of becoming the bike mayor. Yep.
That's great. Thanks, RC. Landrick, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you again for creating this space for us to talk tonight. My story, I have to blame my kids. My daughter, geez, she had to have been about 9 years old, and basically told my wife and I that she was going to ride to school. I didn't have a bike at the time. My wife rides a lot, but at that time I didn't have a bike. And so I had to go out and buy a bike and start riding with my daughter to school. And it was so much fun. We got to explore so much of the city. But unfortunately, about 3 months into her riding to school, a father was killed on the route that we took to her school, going the opposite route. My daughter rode for another 2 months after that, but was just really scared, not for herself, but scared for me. The cycling infrastructure that we have here in Toronto, or at least by where we live, is paint. No protection other than this force field that they think paint will give you. And my daughter went on strike. She wrote to our counselor, wrote to the mayor, wrote to our MPP, and really just got canned responses, and she gave up. So that was 4 years ago. And so when I came across BYCS, I had been writing continuously after that, and I was looking for an advocacy route that I could really take hold of. My honest to goodness main goal is to try and do all I can to create a safer environment for vulnerable road users. And I want my daughter to ride her bike again. And I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to do specifically that, but it's the biggest motivator for me to continue to do this work, because my kids are so important. And my son is riding now with me, and he's riding on the streets that his sister no longer does, and she's very supportive of him, but she's still afraid. And so it's definitely a peak priority piece for me to make sure that we have safe streets, so that doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your age is, that you're able to ride throughout the city.
Thanks, Landrick. That was a pretty perfect encapsulation, I think, of why a lot of us do what we do. I guess I can answer the question myself too. I started around the same time RC did, as bicycle mayor, and for me it was after several years of like dedicated kind of advocacy work. I was on the board of the Halifax Cycling Coalition for a few years, and then I joined the municipal government. Actually has committees on active transportation and on accessibility, and I was on both of those committees, and then my time with those was ending, and I was looking for something else to do. And sort of after having worked on committees and boards for a long time, it felt kind of fun to go and just do something where I was the only person. I didn't have to answer to anybody else, and I could just do my own thing. Because I think, well, for me, my motivation is around disability, being disabled myself, and caring a lot about cycling as a mode of transportation for disabled people. That's not a conversation we hear a lot anywhere. So for me, it was not that I'm like a single issue type bicycle mayor, but it is sort of what drove me to taking on this role, to be able to talk about that more. So that's kind of how I ended up here, I guess. So that's a little bit of our backstories, I guess. And then what I wanted to move to is sort of our philosophies and how we roll now that we're in this role. So the three of us, I think, have pretty different philosophies of how to be a bicycle mayor. And that's kind of one of the cool things about being a bicycle mayor is there's no one right way to do it, and we all do it differently. And you know, we're the three in Canada, but there's people all over the world doing this, and they all do it differently. So I wanted to just go around with the three of us and sort of talk about what our different approaches are. So maybe just to switch up the order, I'll get Leonard to go.
Yeah, thank you. And I should say that I haven't been a bicycle mayor for 4 years. I've only been a bicycle mayor for since last January, so going into my second year now. But yeah, the way that I look at the work that I do, and I hashtag this a lot when it comes to working through different elements of things that can happen in Toronto. I do a lot of copy and pasting. I study what many of the other bicycle mayors do in their cities. My bicycle mayors here in Canada, I'm notorious for stealing ideas here and there. It's kind of amazing where, you know, you've got a mindset of, well, that could never work here, that could never work there. And I love the adventure of trying things and suggesting things and putting those elements into play here in Toronto. We've got 3 million people in the city. It's massive, and not everyone rides a bike, of course. But we ourselves, pedestrians, people that are using mobility devices, we are the vulnerable road users in our city. So any you know, element of you know, something that's innovative, something that's easy, something that really does give presence and priority to this subset, I'm always for trying, always for, you know, saying, yes, we could do something like this, and really putting that hopefully into motion. And I can't say that I'm the, you know, the bearer of, hey, as long as the bicycle mayor says it will happen, not so much. But I really do enjoy putting that into the sphere of conversation. I'm really lucky in Toronto that there are so many advocates. Advocating for cycling has been a continuous movement here in the city, and to see even in the last just couple of years the ability for the city to kind of lean on cycling as that next step when it comes to local transportation, especially during the pandemic. I live down the street from an area called Greektown on the Danforth, and 2.5 years ago there was no protected bike lane on this street, and COVID hit. 10 weeks into it, the city, you know, literally, well, this was the copy and paste moment. And I was working for the organization at 880 Cities that had done a 36-hour pop-up just to kind of show what a complete street would look like. We did it, the city loved it, and then they kind of packaged it up and put it on a shelf. And here COVID hits us, we're all, you know, staying at home, but as we know, we needed to, you know, be able to get outside and start to exercise. And lo and behold, the city's calling up 880 Cities and they're like, hey, you remember that thing that you guys did where you popped up and created that complete street? Could we kind of take a look at that? And honestly, it's an amazing, it is the most amazing copy and paste moment where we've created this thing, it works, and we've kept it, which is also something that doesn't normally happen in Toronto. We love piloting things, and then we just kind of push them off. So yeah, a lot of copy and paste, a lot of taking a look at what has worked in other places and bringing it here to Toronto. I love the conversation, love the just discourse of thinking things through. That's kind of my way of doing stuff, and I've yabbered a bit too much there.
No, that was great. I like that because I think it can be a little bit daunting to think about becoming a bicycle mayor. Like it seems like a pretty big deal, I guess. And so the idea that you don't have to come up with everything yourself and you can collaborate with people and look for opportunities to amplify good stuff, like that saves you a lot of time and effort.
I will say the one thing that I have not in any way, shape, or form been able to copy, there is a bicycle mayor in New York that has a sash.
Yeah.
No one has
Courtney's
brought
one
that
of a
forward,
kind.
nothing. Yeah, so still waiting.
All right. On that note, I think let's go to RC. What's your philosophy, RC?
Yeah, my philosophy and like approach is just having having a conversation and then just continuing a conversation while growing my connection in terms of like beat cycling, government officials, elected government officials, staff. Keep that conversation going. And it has really worked really well here in Waterloo. Something I'd like to share is, as a new or as a incoming bike, before you become a bike mayor, there are different ways to do it. In Amsterdam, I think they did the election. In my case, it was an endorsement. And so I approached the usual city staff and people that I know, and all of them actually turned me down. Nobody said yes.
I didn't know that.
You can be a bike mayor. The other city said, RC, you're not in my city. I won't support you. But I just kept that conversation going, and that connection is always there. And for both of those cities, or three of those cities, when I became a bike mayor, I would then invite them on a bike ride and continue that conversation about the projects here, about the projects there. Hey, how can I support? Like Kitchener would have I'm not the Kitchener bike mayor, but they were planning a downtown cycling grid. And I said, how can I support that? But I think that's really very, very powerful. We're in whatever the situation, even if they said no to me initially, I keep that conversation going, and then combine that. I mentioned about inviting them to ride a bike. Like our previous mayor of Waterloo, Mayor Jaworski, I invited him during the start of COVID to launch or to officially open like Bike Month in June, and it's June 2020. Yeah. And he said yes, and I was like, okay, let's go. So there's two of us, okay, three of us actually. The two of us together with my son who had the GoPro, and he was like the one taking a video. And we were just talking about the plans of Waterloo. We went to Grand River Hospital, waved to the healthcare like heroes, and just took some photos. And that has really helped me. It's also like naturally my style. Just talking to people, riding my bike, somebody waves, I stop and I talk to them. But also I balance that off with really having fun while supporting, while like maybe leading some projects, while supporting like Cycle WR, our advocacy group. They have certain projects that would support parents who wanted to find a safe route to school. So, and that's already established there. So I said, let me support you. So I would be assigned a route, then I would document which is a safe school route to school. Yeah. And it's a great excuse to be away from home, biking to someplace else, and then finding the route by myself, and just keep really having fun while biking. And yeah, that's that's really my philosophy or my style as a bike mayor.
And you're always fun to talk to, RC.
You are, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank-
your smile has always been one of the great joys of whenever we get together to chat. So
thanks.
I like that. Yeah, I had put down that my philosophy was raise hell, but I would say that it's a combination of being like adversarial with respect to like what the city is doing, because we have a lot of issues with progress in Halifax, and i.e. it doesn't happen. So I have trouble having good relationships sometimes with some of the counselors and whatnot, because it's quite frustrating. But at the same time, I try to be like both of you, very supportive of the community, and looking at what efforts are happening and amplifying those or supporting them in the ways that I can. So that's, and like you said, RC, like you talk about your sort of natural disposition and about how you approach things. And I tried to fight my natural propensity to criticize, and it's just not, it's not something I can fight. So I've leaned into that as much as is reasonable. And I think, for better or for worse, I think people biking around know that things are not good. And it's validating for them to hear from the bicycle mayor that, yeah, actually things aren't good. So anyway, whether it's the perfect approach, I don't know, but that's how I operate. So thank you both for
I'm going to
sharing.
follow that up. I'm going to follow
Yeah.
that up. Just asking, like, is when and I told you it was fun just reading through a few of the notes, and with that raising hell, is this like poking directly at specific politicians? Is it calling them out? Is it bridging that gap between them and their constituents? Like how does that raising hell kind of look when you see an issue, when you see a problem?
I moved away from directly sort of addressing any individual counselor or politician. It's not effective. There's a lot of hand waving and that sort of thing when you ask for receipts and accountability. So my approach is more generally to raise issues so that the community is more aware of what's happening. So if I share that there's proposal for some active transportation infrastructure and here are all the problems with it, it's to help the community have a better sense of what it is and what they need to be thinking about when they fill out the survey or talk to their counselor. So more that like capacity building kind of thing, because it's just I also tried to have good relationships with the politicians up front, and it was just a waste of time.
I hear you.
One thing I wanted to add and related to advocacy is like some sort of like a collective advocacy. Like when they see me, I'm smiling, I'm happy, and so on. But at the back of my mind, I know I have 2 or 3 other co-advocates that are more and I'm borrowing the term from Matt Pinder, the relentless critical advocate. I know 2 or 3 in Waterloo or this our area, and I'm waiting for them to weigh in something critical, and I go in something positive. So it balances things out. And so it's like a strategy maybe, but in your like own city and so on, for those who are maybe considering becoming a bike mayor, is that you can do in a way your own advocacy work depending on what style you have, but you're not alone. I think that's one of the points that we discussed. There are other advocates. We have an online advocate like Tom Flood. Like I just like send the links to Tom's like video and so on, right? And so it's I think a collective approach. So there's the relentless positive advocate, there's the critical one, and the more strategic one. Even the strategic, I know 2 or 3. They really think about, hey, Arsen, what do you do? What do we do with this? And it works out, I think, in the long term.
It's nice to know that there is almost a cushion of different elements that you can kind of go to when it comes to the advocacy work. That and you're right, RC, you're not alone. And honestly, wanting to become a bicycle mayor, that should not be a barrier. You shouldn't feel that it's all you and nothing else, that there are many avenues, even within BYCS, being able to lean on them, but definitely there's a lot of advocacy going on, and it's not even just about bicycling. There's a lot of mobility talk and a lot of mobility discussions going on right now that you can lean into. I spend a lot of time speaking with pedestrians and speaking with people that are using other devices beyond cars, and people that are, you know, using public transit as their means of getting to and from. So many other elements that you can kind of put into the work that you want to do as a cycling advocate, because many of us are able to walk to our bikes. So I mean, I know I'm a pedestrian more times than not, and the fact that I got my bike stolen, I was a pedestrian and I was a transit user for about a week before getting a new bike. So yeah, just wanted to add that in too.
Thanks, Lunik. Since we're talking about advocacy stuff, why don't we answer Joanna's question that also got a couple thumbs up. So I'm taking that as people want to hear us talk about this. So Joanna from Hamilton asked, could you speak to how you work or not with established cycling advocacy groups? So yeah, we're kind of talking about that, but I'll specifically talk about how I've worked with the Halifax Cycling Coalition, and then we can each kind of talk about our cities. When I started, I had a really great working relationship with the Halifax Cycling Coalition, in part because their executive director and I already knew each other really well before I started. She actually approached me about becoming bicycle mayor because they wanted to recommend somebody for it. So that was fabulous. And then we collaborated very closely on the first project I did, which was a survey about people's perceptions of the term all abilities with respect to cycling and their experiences of disability in cycling. So I worked closely with Halifax Cycling Coalition on that. Megan Doucette was wonderful, and she did a beautiful report and everything based on our survey. So that was fabulous. And I've collaborated with them sort of over the first year and a half, 2 years of my role. I've been bicycle mayor for about 3 years now. Had a pretty good working relationship with folks there. Unfortunately, they no longer have an executive director. They don't have a paid staff member right now. So their capacity to sort of collaborate has been dramatically reduced over the last year and a half. So for me, I've felt a little bit on my own for the last little while, which hasn't been terrible because I've been doing this long enough that I don't feel like sort of out of my depth, but it has been sort of a, bit of a roller coaster in terms of how much I can work with them. So it's just the way it is. Leonard, do you want to talk about Cycle Toronto?
Yeah. So a good relationship with Cycle Toronto. They've been here for well over a decade, if not longer than that, in different capacities. But Cycle Toronto is definitely the big piece. They have satellite advocacy groups Midtown. They've got one out in the East, Scarborough Bikes as well, but a real collaborative relationship. I was actually able, through Cycle Toronto, to be able to sit in on some key meetings with our pedestrian and cycling department for the city, which really was an eye-opener for myself, and having a better understanding of budgeting and decision makers and why things happen the way they do. I know that there is a perception that Cycle Toronto is maybe a bit too cozy with our city officials, but there is this balancing act that you need to kind of play when it comes to working with the city to push through policies and procedures and pieces of that larger puzzle to start building out what it is that you need to do. But I'm happy that I get to work so well with Cycle Toronto, and they've given me a lot of support in the things that I'm trying to advocate for throughout the city as well.
Oh, that's great. RC, how about Cycle WR?
Yeah, for me, I've known Cycle WR a few years before I became a bicycle mayor. There was another organization actually that I was following called TriTag, which is more on transit. So I attended 1 or 2 meetings, but I just know them, but it wasn't really like a close relationship. So when I started as bike mayor, they were the first organization that I approached. So it is more of like a really working relationship. What I noticed is they have like clear priorities, programs or projects. And I was thinking like, okay, you already have that. Then what I'll do is I'll see what I can support. And then I can also do other things. And that has really worked out well. When I mentioned about supporting their like finding that school route, bike route to school. And that's one of like the projects that I volunteered last year, and I'm volunteering again this year. And so I think one thing that might also work in your city is just definitely having that conversation and identifying, hey, what's your priority? Because they can like just cover everything. And then you can then say, hey, like this is an area that you're doing and I can support it. And then you can then identify other areas that you would like to develop on the cycling side.
Cool.
Great. Darcy. So I'm going to move us along to our next discussion question, because I know we have some folks interested in this one as well, but keep putting your questions in the chat too as you think of them. So next little roundtable discussion is, despite these sort of different philosophies and approaches to doing this work that we all have, I think one thing that the 3 of us have sort of agreed on is that this work is really about building community. And we've all done it in different ways, but in the past year or so, we've all found ourselves working on initiatives related to children. So I think we have some folks interested in these initiatives tonight. So I'm just going to mention what we're doing in Halifax and then pass it around for each of us to talk about our city. So last year, one of our community members, Jen, who's on the call tonight, along with a former board member from the Cycling Coalition, decided to start having Kidical Mass in Halifax. And at the time, they didn't really need my support, but I learned from Lanrick to amplify everything. So I was, very happy to support and amplify as needed. And then when Susie, the board member, left the city, Jen needed a little bit more support. So I offered to step up and support Kidical Mass for the rest of the season. And then we're starting off strong. We're all planned for this season about what we're doing. We had 6 rides last year. Jen can correct me if I'm wrong, but we had, a ride every month from May through October. We had lots of people show up. We had great feedback on our evaluations and some great ideas for how to improve this year. So it was really just a wonderful way to get more families out and more visible. And it is one of my favorite parts of the evaluation that the feedback we got was that people liked the slightly radical feeling of taking over the streets. And if you've read about Kidical Mass at all, it is meant to be, critical mass, but for kids. And so it is meant to have that vibe of like taking over the streets and demanding safe infrastructure. So it's not just a fun like family ride. It's like, no, we're serious about infrastructure. So I'm so grateful for, community members stepping up and starting this, because I'm not a parent. I wouldn't have done this myself. But it's really nice to have the opportunity to support it, and also to meet. I met so many more like community members who I probably wouldn't have met otherwise. So it was really, really wonderful. And I'm looking forward to this season. So Lanrick, your Kidical Mass.
So of course, it was so easy to copy exactly what was going on in Halifax. I have a really wonderful friend, Robin, who we had literally tweeted at the exact same time, just about, oh my gosh, look what they're doing in Halifax. And we connected with each other offline and simply took the concept and said, how can we do this here in Toronto? Created a couple of maps, threw that out into the ethos, and continue to just thank the city of Halifax for starting this up and giving us a bit of courage to do this. Toronto's huge, and trying to get a whole bunch of kids with their parents out on our streets, it felt a bit like, can we actually do this? And we were overwhelmed we did 5, I believe, here in Toronto. And our first 3 were just like, it was amazing to be able to ride from the brickworks down in the valley of the Don and take them out to Corktown Commons. We did another one where we went from Cherry Beach to a section of Tommy Thompson Park. It is something that we're definitely going to continue this year. It was just a really busy year, so we weren't able to do every month through the spring and summer, but we're definitely going to be planning ourselves ahead. The one note for our use and for our expansion is we had a lot of kids that would have wanted to come on their own. So I think this year we're going to try and maybe partner with schools so that those kids that are, within the 15 to 18-year-old age can, not necessarily have their parents, but still feel confident that we're not taking them out onto the DVP or something like that. But the conversations, the meetings with parents and their kids, the look of the kids being able to ride side by side with their parents, huge thrill of just seeing the fact that we can all get out there and utilize this space for what we should be able to do, which is ride a bike and do it safely at that. So again, to Halifax, thank you so much for putting that out there, because it gave Big Bad Toronto the courage to do something really, really fun, and I'm really happy that we've been a part of that.
Yeah, it was awesome to see. May 7th, first ride of the year, right?
Sure.
You
Let's
ready?
do that.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Over to Waterloo. What's happening with kids in Waterloo, RC?
Yeah, for us, it's early planning and conversation about organizing a bike bus. And I think most of us have seen the videos from Spain or Portland, Oregon, and just watching it, it's so much fun. Lots of kids, lots of parents, taking the road, making it safer for everyone who was participating. There's an organization here in Waterloo that handles the bus system, but also they're the ones managing the walking school bus. And so I approached them and again started that conversation with them. They were interested, but they had a number of questions and concerns. But I just said, hey, why don't you help me identify a school that will be a good pilot? Just have one school for now to pilot within the year. And they forwarded one school, and as it just happens, I know a parent who's a cycling advocate that his kids go to that school. So I met him about 2-3 weeks ago, and he's really interested in starting the bike bus. And what we discussed is the importance of having other parents to join in organizing it. I think that's the key first step. And with their local community, one big plus is they already have walking groups around the neighborhood. So the idea there is, okay, you walk from Monday to Thursday, but on Friday, let's go bike bus. Let's go bike busing. And so that's the approach, because the other bike buses around the world, or most of them, would be active on a Friday. And it works out for, it's the end of the week. Maybe some parents can volunteer. The kids are just excited with the bike bus every Friday, the last day of the week. So it works out really well. And the other thing is, and I just found out with my this parent contact, is they have their own neighborhood mailing list. It's a mom's mailing list, and he's saying, I'll I'll go in and then invite the other parents if they want to join. But the basic idea again is starting with those walking groups around the neighborhood, converting the walking group to a bike bus on Friday. And this parent will be spearheading in terms of the route. It's already in his mind, like where it will start. The bus will start and gather a few parents and kids as part of our plan. We really want at least a minimum, like 4 parents. So one who will lead the ride, one at the back, and a left and a right parent who will then do the intersections. And then he will be identifying the next stops along the route. And we will be crossing a traffic road, Westmount. So he's identified 2 areas to safely cross Westmount to go into the school. So it's still not 100%, but hopefully as more parents join in, we'll be able to do a pilot in May until the end of the school year in June. But yeah, I'll share.
Question just on that, RC, which it just sounds so fantastic. Do you have to work with the police, with your local police, with this, or is it all?
That was one of the suggestions of the transportation organization, the student transportation organization, and I think it will be good. I looked online, and there was a number of police organizations who helped, particularly in some cities in Spain.
Okay.
But because of budget constraints, they said, no, we can't do it anymore. And the parents said, okay, thank you. We'll just continue.
They'll do it themselves. Yeah.
They do it themselves.
Okay.
The great thing with our student transportation service, and they said, RC, we can support it up to a certain point, but we can't be the one in front. But they have the vests. They have the yellow orange vests.
Sure.
That they will be able to let us borrow for Friday. And yeah, it's really so exciting. Just
cool. No, that's awesome.
Great.
That's awesome.
Pull that off.
Yeah. I saw Mark put in the chat that Hamilton's starting bike bus, so maybe Hamilton's going to be the first Canadian city to get it done.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I can see in the next year we're just every city in Canada is going to have this, because bike bus has taken off. Awesome.
Maybe Landrick, we can join the Hamilton bike bus.
Yeah, I will definitely head out to Hamilton.
Hopefully it's a Friday.
Yeah.
We can go to Hamilton, join the bike bus, and then spend the day there, or ride the bike, whatever.
All right.
We'll grab Tom Flood for that one too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
I see we have a couple questions in the chat. We do have one more question on our personal list that I want to cover before we get to other folks' questions. So it's important, but we can also we'll cover it pretty quickly. But if folks want to keep putting questions in the chat, we'll take the last 5 or 10 minutes to cover those as well. So the last question I wanted to make sure that we covered was the 3 of us all belong to groups that are systematically marginalized in society, and want to be, kind of upfront about that, because I think it matters, especially in cycling, where there's certain stereotypes about who does and doesn't cycle. So I'm hoping each of you can speak to how your identity, and whatever part of your identity you want to talk about, but how that sort of intersects with your role as bicycle mayor, and what impact, if any, you think it has on your work. So Lynn, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a black man. I'm a black man on a bike, and in the city of Toronto, being a Black male at times, more so than not, can be a factor that puts myself in danger. On top of being that vulnerable person on a bike, having to deal with systemic racism in our city, it's definitely a heightened understanding when you're put into a position on a bike. It was one of I think like my top three pieces of becoming the bicycle mayor. I wanted to see more people that looked like me on bikes. I wanted to be able to advocate and allow for young Black men and women, people that were within the BIPOC community, to feel that they also could be on a bike and utilize the public space in that same way. I've had dealings with police while I've been on my bike. They have not all been bad, but the bad ones have definitely left an uneasy taste afterwards. And so there's definitely for myself, making sure that that it's a known fact that the systemic racism really does bleed through and that it needs to be changed. I'm so happy to be able to talk with people about that piece of what is a problematic piece. And this is not, this is not the let's bash the police piece, but it's because we have data that supports what many people in the Black and BIPOC community already knew. The fact that it's out, the fact that it's public, it makes for the conversation to be much richer, because we can call that out. Saying all of that, I think I went in just feeling, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the only Black guy on my bike. I am so just overwhelmingly giddy at the fact that we have BIPOC rides, we have Mandem and Galdem that do these epic 20, 40, 60 kilometer rides throughout the city that are Black led, but open to the full gamut of our city. And it's really a testament of just that want to see equity put forward on a bike. So problematic, but definitely not something that I feel can't be overcome. And with conversation, with truthfulness, with making sure that we're not hiding this or pushing it off to the side, but really tackling the issue and tackling that problem, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to make it loud, make it proud, make it something that we can all work towards something better. Yeah.
Thank you, Leonard. I'm glad you're here. All right, RC.
For me, I'm a brown immigrant man, and I've had really positive experience here in Waterloo. But as an immigrant, when I'm thinking back, one of my dreams when we migrated to Canada was definitely to own a home and to buy a brand new spanking SUV. Because of all what I've been through, not just the biking side, but also the sustainability side. I work for Sustainable Waterloo Region. My dream now is to own an electric bike, a Reason Mueller electric bike. That's what I'm saying.
Go big.
but just as an immigrant, it's like my friends in the Philippines will then see, hey, what's your car? It's like, right? But now I look at it differently. We're in what's good for me. How do I move around my city?
Mhm.
And most of the time, it's just short trips. Again, I mentioned about 5-6 kilometers and so on. So I would say that's maybe 70-80% of my trips. So I'll ride my, in the future, hopefully reasonable electric bike. And for other trips, the longer trips, I really prefer like transit. So when I have a meeting I live in Waterloo, but when I have a meeting in Cambridge, which is like a 20-25 minute drive, I would take my bike, a light bike, ride the LRT,
Mhm.
and go to the end of Kitchener, then ride the bus for meetings in Cambridge. And I just love it. I like transit. Again, I think the schedule and the delays is a big disadvantage. But if that's with our LRT here, it's really good. It's like every 15 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes. And it's really it has really positively affected me with my own like experience having conversations with advocates here. So for me, short trips, it's really cycling. Medium trips will be transit, and what I really hope is we'll have all day go, so I can visit Landrick more in Toronto, ride with the good people from the Dutch embassy or Netherlands
Yeah.
embassy, Netherlands
Yeah.
consulate. They're just so friendly, and I learned so much from them. So like using the train as a way to travel farther.
Further. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Cool.
It's great. Thanks, RC. Yeah, I can't believe the GO hasn't improved since I lived there a long time ago. Getting to Toronto is always a hassle from Waterloo. Anyway, on the topic, so I'm a woman, which is like one thing when you're riding a bike, but I'm also disabled, and I learned pretty early on as being bicycle mayor that I had to be pretty quick with like the block button on Twitter, because when you talk about being disabled and riding a bike, you get a lot of trolls and a lot of people making assumptions about who can ride a bike and who can't. And for me, it's been a brilliant mobility aid, and I've talked about that long before I became bicycle mayor, because I want people to know it's a great tool, but it has been both like a blessing because it's allowed me to connect with people who are underrepresented in cycling, and to help them feel heard, and to push for kinds of infrastructure and policies that support more disabled people to cycle. But it has brought out a lot of people's ableism, and having to deal with that is well, it's just a daily thing if you're a disabled person anyway. So I've learned a lot as bicycle mayor. That's something I probably should say. Like, I've learned a lot, not just about how to do advocacy and how to collaborate with other bicycle mayors and all those things, but I've learned a lot about myself, and maybe that's kind of selfish, but it for better or
Yeah.
for worse,
Yeah.
it's been pretty cool that way. So we have like 5 minutes left, so I do want to get to your questions. I can also stay. I already watched the Ted Lasso for this week, so I'm good for a bit.
I'm behind by an extra week, so
Oh no, okay.
I gotta pick up on that, but I'm also good for time, so.
Oh, no spoilers. Don't worry, Joanna. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll back because we had a good question, big one from Leonard. So he says, in Mississauga, area resident groups can get so vocal in their opposition to any changes. I mean, you're describing any city in Canada, I think, but be it adding cycling infrastructure, designing with Vision Zero policies, and even just bringing traffic calming measures. How do you deal with these groups and try to make them see the benefits of the latest safety practices? I'll start and say, at least in Halifax, that I just try not to give those people any oxygen, unless it's somebody who really is open to learning something and, having a mind changed and opened. Most people who are saying this stuff are not going to change, at least in my experience, in my opinion. I don't even like respond. It's just better to let the haters just die on Twitter and not give them any airtime. It's hard, but that's someone's wrong on the internet, and I just try to let it go. So, what's your approach, Lanik?
Yeah, NIMBYism is that type of ignorance is it's a real time suck trying to deal with those. A lot of my pushback is I'm a data nerd and I love being able to put maps together and really kind of show the intelligence when it comes to protecting vulnerable road users. I lean on the fact of being car dependent and worrying about how fast you're able to get to and from puts myself, puts my kids, puts my wife, puts my friends in danger. I really do lean on the human factor that these NIMBYs clearly don't see. It doesn't shut everyone down, but it really does start to focus the attention on the human being that is going to be utilizing public space. And it is public space. We're all allowed to be on this street. It's how that street is broken up and utilized for everyone. And that just means that drivers in the end need to give up their big, huge pieces of roadway.
Yeah, that's
kill them with data. Kill them with data.
Well, and I think that's a message that we just have to repeat all the time, regardless, like not even necessarily in reply to somebody saying these things, because it's a mind-blowing concept when you hear it for the first time, that like streets are public spaces and they don't belong to you and they have a higher purpose. Like right. Truly, you know. So yeah. RC, what do you do?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Lardick said about like data information. And for me, it's definitely positively affects cycling, but it's something that happened, I would say 10 to 15 years ago. And this is the move toward like holding the line here in Waterloo region. So it was definitely the advocate. So it's a combination of advocacy, but data is very, very important, as in the future of the city, urban planning. And do we expand, or do we keep the line here where it is now and save on our farmland? And by the way, we have water tables, because for us, our water source are like Grand River to a certain percentage, but we also have wells that would take water from underground. And if we expand, it's just like we will have less water. Basically, we will have less quality water. So that's one thing, and it's all backed up with data. But I think the advocates and those who crunch the data also notice that, hey, if we expand, it will be more expensive to then connect those communities with a road, with your transit, your electricity, and so on. But if you keep it here and then eventually like put in an LRT to then go through the city, then we can be more productive as a city, but at the same time, make things accessible, get a lot more people in the city. Everyone will pay taxes and so on. That's again the bottom line also of the city, to then improve the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So that holding the line it's an eye opener for me. When I moved to Waterloo about 20 years ago, it was like, what's this? I want to move far and get a big house. That's really my thinking. Again, as an immigrant, what did I know, right? Like, but now I recently the bike ride that was organized by the City of Kitchener, one of the founders was there, because I know him from the community. And I just said, thank you for doing this so many years ago. We held our line, and we're benefiting from it. It's so easy to access big parts of the city. That's why I bike, and it benefits more people within our city. So it's also like we're seeing it with Bill 23 now, and they want to get the green belt, and as Waterloo region, we're fighting against it. One eye opener is like, most elected officials and most city staff know the hold the line. They're like saying, let's hold the line. Like, and I'm like, okay, what happened here? It's because all the years of the awesome work of these advocates. So that's, I think, one other thing is that it took time. That's why I'm applying it, what I'm learning, what Jillian and Larnick said, what we learned, we then apply it. We know it will take time, but we are patient. Like as a bike mayor, we will eventually move. We will not be a bike mayor, but we will pass it on to someone.
That's right. Yeah.
Who would become, would continue. A different style, maybe the next Waterloo bike mayor will be a relentlessly critical advocate. That's what I hope.
I'm not moving back, RC. I'm not.
You got
All
it.
right, it's the top of the hour, so why don't let's at least answer Joanna's question, and then if people have more questions, I can stay. But Joanna asked how much time we spend on being bicycle mayor, either weekly or monthly, and I don't know. Like I don't know how. I guess I should look at my phone to see how much Twitter use I get in a week, but that's probably like most of my work, honestly. When you sign up to be a bicycle mayor, they tell you like 4 to 8 hours a week. There's no world in which I've spent 8 hours in a week on being bicycle mayor, but I probably undervalue the amount of time I spend like thinking about, oh, I want to tweet about this thing and I need to like look at this active transportation plan and put together some thoughts and those sorts of things. But it's really kind of on your own time and what makes sense. So I don't know, Leonard Garcia, do you have different?
I think for myself, RC, before you jump in, I think for myself, all I have to do is just look at the time codes from YouTube of me watching committee meetings, and that gives me like it's. I'll say it in this sense that at least in my headspace, being the bicycle mayor isn't anything separated from my life in general. I love cycling. I love my kids. I want my community to be better. It's a holistic, mindset of maybe 2-3 days. I don't have to do anything on Twitter. I don't have to say anything in general, but something comes up on a Friday evening and it's, all encompassing. I don't put a schedule and I don't put a counter on. It's how you feel and how relevant you need to be in the moment that determines your time frame. But you don't want to burn yourself out. There's definitely like you can only take or do so much, and this is a volunteer gig, so take that with the grain of salt that it is that you're putting yourself out there. You don't want to burn yourself out on it, so put in some time, but not to the point where you're going to not want to enjoy what you're doing.
Thanks, Leonard. And RC, your job is sort of related also to your role, right? So how do you work that out?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because I work for I mentioned about Sustainable Waterloo Region, and I run the TravelWise program. So it's like we try to minimize the single occupancy vehicles in Waterloo Region, working with organizations. So members, we have 40 plus members. And it just ties up nicely with being a bike mayor, because one of the ways to do it is to ride your bike. So it's riding a bike, transit, carpooling, and walking will always, most of the time, will be there. So it's a nice fit, and that's why I really don't know, similar to Larry, I don't know how many hours, but I know it's very flexible. There'll be a week, maybe just 30 minutes or an hour, but there's a week last summer when I volunteered for the KW multicultural festival. So I was running the slow bike race, and it's Saturday and Sunday. So I was there almost the whole day during the festival. So again, very flexible, and I really like what Landrick also mentioned about, hey, just having fun and not thinking you need this hours, and so it's really a volunteer gig. And but that's also the hard part. Since we're enjoying, like I'm enjoying myself, I think I use up a lot of time with being a bike.
Thanks, RC. Yeah, I think the bottom line is kind of flexible, and it works with whatever. My job is not at all related to active transportation. So, and Joanna also asked, what is a slow bike race? And I think I have to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, tell us what the slow bike race is, RC.
The slow bike race, again, Landrick, similar to you, I copy stuff. So it's from an organization called Cycling into the Future. And what they do is they work with like schools, grade 5 and 6 students to teach them how to safely bike. And one of the activities is you have a slow bike race wherein it's a short, like 50-meter race. Once the start of the race, the last person who crosses the line wins without stepping down on your bike.
Love it.
And so it's a very safe race. So they were telling me, do you have insurance, RC? And I said, no, it's very safe. We can do it now. And like it's the slowest, man. It's like and I raced with like a lot of people there. Like there was one time like adults would come and we would race and I would always lose. And then there will be kids. And I was saying, I'll win this time. And I still lost. I would step down always. And the kids are very, very competitive.
Awesome.
But it's, again, slow bike. Very, very safe. Very safe race.
That's cool.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
All right. I think those are all the questions we had in the chat, and I know we're after time, and there's lots of thank yous in the chat. But does anybody have any sort of final questions? You can just unmute and ask questions at this point, I think.
Any hands up?
I don't see any hands. Oh. Okay. Dorothy. Oh,
Yeah.
hard-hitting question, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Critics say that there is an echo chamber in cycling Twitter. How do we expand reach?
Get off Twitter. No, honestly, like no. I mean, Twitter is a great amplifier per se, but some really good conversations is me going to my local park or going down to City Hall or talking with the bus driver that had a close call with a painted bike lane. Twitter is one tool, but it can't be the only way that you get out and communicate. So I use Twitter, I use Instagram. My LinkedIn actually is now becoming like my really awesome like amplifying piece, but I love talking with people. LinkedIn. Yeah, I know, right? It's like the most boring, but you're always wanting to communicate in different realms. So Twitter is one piece, but it can't be the only thing that you talk into. And just know that you want to be able to get the word out. So do it in different ways. I'm going to be on the CBC tomorrow doing a little bit on cycling and the environment and how those two things start to really coincide, which is kind of strange that it's 2023 and we're talking about the pieces of the pie there. But yeah, just a tool, not your only way of getting out there.
And for me, very similar to Landrick, it's really going out. And I mentioned about like with my experience as an immigrant. So I work closely with Immigration WR.
Nice.
And also the KW Multicultural Center. It's really so refreshing working with them because they have lots of questions. Most of them like do not want to bike. They see it as like we need a car. Mm-hmm. And so those conversations have really like it's just relatively new right now, but it's moving forward. We're in with events showing them how to safely bike around the region. People who live in Kitchener, I've highlighted, for example, the downtown cycling grid, which is now being will be done this year and will be connected to the trails and other like bike paths.
Good.
So it's different groups, not your typical just like recycling advocacy groups, but maybe you can identify different groups within your city and just maybe show up in a meeting and see what they're doing, but see if there's an opportunity for having that conversation about cycling and how you can maybe start cycling in your city. Oh,
I just saw that pop up. Like, yes, the helmet always does a great conversation starter in cafes and coffee shops as well. I love just putting it on the table and someone will eventually pop over to say, so, you know, where do you bike to? What do you do? And it's a nice piece. We didn't hear from you, Jillian. How do you get out of the echo chamber?
I mean,
Or
I guess
just fight it out.
well, in some ways, Twitter is not entirely an echo chamber for me, because I think there's still work within the cycling space around like disability stuff. Again, like I see a lot of sort of ignorance about that, even in our echo chamber. But similar to kind of both of you working with groups who are not about cycling necessarily. So I've made a lot of connections with other disabled folks in the city who do and don't ride bikes, but it's an opportunity for me to talk to more disabled people, and then they can call me when it's like, hey, they're trying to put a bike lane on this street and it's going to affect the accessible parking, and like, what's your take on this? So I can like build that bridge, because disabled people tend to get forgotten or discriminated against in planning decisions, especially when they're putting in bike lanes, and it's just like the worst, because we don't want to have bike lanes that are then further making mobility challenging for disabled people. So that for me is like the natural link, because that's part of my identity. At the same time, it's been a pandemic pretty much the whole time that I've been bicycle mayor, so I'm not super comfortable like going to places and talking to people, because I'm still trying to not catch COVID. But you know, being outside and having those chats with people who stopped at a stoplight or whatever it is on your bike are always good too, because it is refreshing to find out that all the people cycling in the city aren't actually on Twitter, and they don't know everything that's happening, and they have questions about what's happening. So it's a good chance to sort of build some capacity in the community there too. All right.
Anything else in the chat?
I think
Or did we do it?
I think we've exhausted everyone.
Yay!
All right. Well, we're well past time.
Yeah. So now what? Now what? So I mean,
Joanna, can you expand on that question?
So
is everyone here gonna apply to be a bike mayor now? Like, if you just grown from 12, like, what's everybody gonna do?
Yeah, you can talk about that. I see there's some Hamilton representation. What's happening in Hamilton?
Yeah, Hamilton. Where is this bike mayor that's coming out?
I don't know.
Well, Mark's one of our co-chairs on Cycle Hamilton, and it's a terrific group. That's part of why I was asking about how you work with established advocacy groups, and whether I just assumed you were attached and part of that, but it sounds like it's the opposite. You're completely like independent. You might work with them, you might not. You know, it's a totally different advocacy system, and people are really individual. And you know, popping over to the Bike Mayor's website, it looks like you can just put in your own application and become a bike mayor.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what it looks
Come on, Hamilton.
No, I don't want to. Like with Cycle Hamilton's advocacy, we work with anybody as long as they want to expand cycling in Hamilton. So, like, I even work with the cycling committee, so we can't be all bad.
I'd just like to point out, you know, listening to all the stuff that you guys are doing and being aware of a lot of it online, watching the tweets and everything, and getting a taste of the kids biking in the bike bus, and all the things. It's exciting. It's very, it's great to see it. And one of the things that you've brought up today, which is important, is the way you align yourselves maybe with cycling advocacy groups. And Lanark was talking about Cycle Toronto, and the groups are loosely sort of spread out across Canada, but they're very active locally. And it's exciting what they're doing. Cycle Toronto, which I'm aware of, but now I've sort of dug my teeth a bit more into what they're doing, and they're really trying to push. And one of the things I wanted to suggest, because Bicycle Mayor has a bit of kind of, I guess, official level to it, or layer to it. And at the same time, you're all regular people, and you have this passion and this excitement, and it's great. But at the same time, there's a certain level of leadership and a certain level of expectation there. And there's always going to be controversy. And I interviewed Mike Layton, and, just to do his perspective. And the biggest change that's been happening in cycling is, yes, more people are on bikes, but the lights are on in municipalities and cities all over the world, much more than they've ever been. I mean, I've been in the business for like 30 odd years, and watched the first Toronto Cycling Committee start, and all the very first bike month or bike week, and we sponsored it, and all the initiatives. And there's always been this level of advocacy and passion, but you really need to have connections at the corridors of power to really bring about the change. It's not easy to make it happen. It's controversial. At the same time, it just takes persistence. And so many things have happened, like the bike situation in Toronto. It's like astounding. I go out on I'm outside and I see somebody in a cargo bike, and I'm going, like, that's really a change. I mean, I took a picture. I run around the park where I live, and I took a picture. I saw somebody with their cargo bike, their Urban Arrow, on the park, whatever. I took a picture and I sent it to Urban Arrow in Holland, just to say, hey, look, this is, what's happening, how it's spreading. But one of the most important things that Mike Layton said in the interview was, he said, the change in the meetings is that cycling is no more just a recreational tool.
Yeah.
It's really become a form of transportation,
Yeah.
which is really that you guys are living, and you see it every day. You're out on the bike. I mean, I see your tweets, Lanark, and I see, it's in the community here. It's awesome. There's really an active community. So there's a lot of mobility, but that community, which creates a lot of goodwill at the base level, that needs to be converted into the counselor's office, where you got a guy like Mike Layton who can really, and Mike said, he made enemies, a few enemies along the way. And, I was sad when I forget his last name, counselor that just, he's not a counselor anymore, but you'll know who I mean if I can get his name.
Joe Mahavik?
Sorry?
Joe Mahavik?
Not Mahavik. He was close to Tory.
Oh, Joe Cressy.
Joe Cressy, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No
and
problem.
So Cressy, he was a big advocate, and those two guys would get into the ring with I've seen so many stories, sad stories, where you want to put in a bike lane. I mean, Tom Flood is an example of, going out there and saying, hey, look how much controversy just one bike lane causes.
Yeah, I know.
But it does. And the side that says no has to be met with opposition, equal passion from the side that says yes. And one of the great stories that I was reading about was this little town in the UK, and the side that was going for the bike lane, the other guys ran out of money, and they couldn't. It was a funny story, but you had to have the wherewithal to keep at it, and at the same time keep your stick on the ice, and you can't get into that kind of level of, you don't want to be angry or cause that kind of controversy, but at the same time, you have to still hold your ground. Like you were saying, Mr. Waterloo, you got to hold your ground and keep going forward. Anyways, the thing I was going to say with Mike Layton was the change of conversation in the meetings was that cycling is now a form of transportation. But he said, even with that, which is a big change, I mean, I remember we interviewed his dad when he was a real active cyclist, and you know, he was one of the protagonists at the beginning that was kind of trying to start that whole mentality, which happens on the streets now with you guys and all the kids things. But with a guy like Mike, I was going to suggest that each of you and every mayor, and I was a little surprised when I started to dig into the mayor thing, that there was only 3 or 4. There was one out in Victoria. I guess
Yeah.
she's not there anymore. I did a little digging. I talked to James at the head office and started, you know, like I was telling you, Jillian, we want to do a story and we want to interview you all. And there needs to be more awareness of you
We
guys.
almost need that critical mass
We
across
need
the
more.
country.
I mean, I'm
No,
surprised there's
yeah.
only
No,
3 in
that's
Canada.
fair.
I mean, and then the US, and I'm looking, and you know, we did a story on the US and Courtney, but there needs to be more visibility because there are more people like you in every city
Yep.
all over the world. And I know that you're talking about doing the youth mayor, and this idea is stellar. You know, you get the young people who are active and they got friends, and the more people that you have talking cycling, the more you have that energy and that buzz, and that's when the politicians will listen. But you still need, I was going to suggest that when you have that layer, that sort of title, it's good to make friends or find out who the people are in city council that will help you turn the wheel. Because you know, you look at some of the battles that are going on, and some of them are a shoe-in because, you know, everybody's on board and others are not. And that's where the real change is, to get that bike lane in and make it permanent. I mean, we all screamed and got off our
No.
chairs and clapped when we saw that the Midtown became permanent.
Yep. No,
You know?
I hear you.
You know,
And I mean, just to add to that, Diane Sachs, who's taken over
Yes.
here in Toronto. Diane Sachs is the counselor that's taken over for Mike Layton. Have a good relationship with her, already sitting down with her on many different fronts when it comes to cycling advocacy. And I really do feel that she's going to take what Mike has already started and continue and
Yes.
push that forward. So
Yes.
she's at least one counselor out of the 25, and you know, I'm working to at least be able to be on here in Toronto, work on at least having dialogue with all of them, even if we don't see eye to eye, at least being able
Yes.
to have that piece, because and I'll be quick on this. I live in Toronto Danforth. My counselor is not the most wanted cycling advocate, but we've got pieces, and it's really hard sometimes for my counselor to push back because it works. It works on Danforth, it works on Dundas. We've got Lakeshore. I'm battling right now to put protected bike lanes on Jones.
Yep.
It's becoming harder for my counselor to push that NIMBY narrative when we've got, you know,
so many other positives.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the kids things and all the rest of the energetic efforts come into play. But
That's
you
right.
really need to arm wrestle those guys. It's everywhere the same.
Fair
You know,
enough, fair
it's
enough.
all. But anyways, and so the bicycle mayors, you know, we're going to try to do what we can to get more of you.
Thank you.
All across North America. We need one in every city. It's
Fair enough.
That's what we think. Yeah. I'm gonna wrap us up because it's almost my bedtime in Halifax. It's almost 9:30. So I saw Kimberly ask about can Velo Canada Bikes help, and yeah, we'd love
Yes, thank you.
love to help any way we can get this amplified so we can get more bicycle mayors across the country. Yeah. So thank you everybody so much for joining us for this chat tonight. It was really, really fun and a great opportunity for us to see each other. We will share the recording once I figure out where it will go and how to do that, so you can share it with other folks if you want to. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and
Thanks everyone.
get home safe, I guess.
Thanks everyone for putting it on.